Hello and welcome to another episode about UFO books. Come on, I'm doing some kibbles. Yes, I know, Gina, you're just gonna lay there. Oh, you gonna come earn some kibbles? Time to go to work. Yep, give Grandma some kisses. Come on, earn them kibbles. Okay, Panther, we going to work? Come on. Good girl, Tiki. Panther? So I figured my Stargate shirt would be appropriate for today. The two books that I'm going to briefly talk about, or what I call a skinny dip, is Hunt for the Skinwalker, as well as Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. The reason I'm connecting these two books, the first was published in 2005, the other was published in 2021, but they both relate to the property known as the Skinwalker Ranch. The first book, Hunt for the Skinwalker, Science Confronts the Unexplained at a Remote Ranch in Utah. This is by Colm A. Kelleher and George Knapp. Colm Kelleher was one of the scientists involved with the project. George Knapp is a journalist from Las Vegas. The book goes through what initially started happening with the owners, who they refer to as Gorman in both of their books, to protect the privacy of the individuals who purchased the ranch. Unfortunately, not everyone has gone with that, and their name has been produced in other publications. But I will give credit to these individuals for at least trying to give them some type of privacy. The one thing that did stand out for me reading this is the owners prior to the ones mentioned in this book had been there for a number of decades beforehand. Now, for some reason, the property was vacant for about 7 years prior to them selling to the Gormans. They didn't move that far away. They were living in Salt Lake City, and yet in neither book is there any mention of anyone contacting those original owners to find out, one, why was the property vacant for 7 years, and two, why did they put the stipulation into the sale with the Gormans that they were to be contacted if there was going to be any digging done on the property? Let me know what your thoughts are about that. I'm thinking, especially after having read the two books, that they agreed to let somebody, military or some other organization, bury things on their property that maybe shouldn't have been there, that is causing some of these things going on. But that's just me. The other thing is, although the scientist Colm Kelleher keeps talking about proof, there really isn't any as far as this book that I came across. If you've read it, let me know what your thoughts are. What I've come across is theories, speculation, but no actual proof. The Gormans sold their property to Robert Bigelow, a man who has a bit of controversy around his name as well. But the Gormans, after 2 years and a bit, had enough of a variety of different and very disturbing events occurring to them. Of note also was the original house and different things in it that didn't quite make sense. But again, after the Gormans left and Bigelow and his team of scientists took over, no one else actually lived in the original house, so we have no idea what any of that was about. They didn't speak to the original owners, who could easily have answered that question as well. So that all remains a mystery. When the scientists came, they built their own place to stay. They were traveling back and forth between Las Vegas. Gorman continued to oversee the property for them. That didn't quite make sense to me either, because they had purchased a ranch 25 minutes away. I'm not a rancher, but how you keep up with your own ranch plus go to take care of this other place didn't quite make sense to me either. Again, that's just me. When they're talking about these massive dire wolves, is what I call them, there were things that didn't make sense there either. I mean, who sees this massive creature walking towards you and you all just stand there? I mean, to me, if you saw some massive creature you didn't know, I'm pretty sure you'd leave. But be that as it may, the other part of that incident that didn't make sense to me is here's this family with their two younger kids standing there watching this creature come, and then they send the son to get another gun, and he runs into the house. No, you don't run. And in any other circumstance, that's when the creature would have gone after him. Like, there's just, I don't know if it's the way the story is written, but there's so many things to me that just don't, I'm sorry, ring true. They're very questionable. I'm not saying the Gormans lied. I'm just saying the way that this is described in the book, to me, does not sound legit. There are other things that came up, like where they noticed portals opening and so many other different events, and portals come up in this and things coming through that people have observed. But again, one of those sightings was from the deck of the original house, not where the scientists stayed. Another thing that just made me question it was when they were talking about the herd of wolves. Really? Who got paid to edit this? I mean, I get we don't all know everything, but a wolf is a pack, not a herd. And if you can make such a blatant mistake like that and still get published, then to me, that brings a lot of other things into question of how well was this actually reviewed before publication. Because like I say, when you're reading some of this stuff, I'm just saying, to me, it doesn't sound the way that people would typically respond to the various events they talk about. There's no actual proof given in the book for any of these things. And I get they're anomalies. It's hard to capture. There were a variety of different things. They didn't put in cameras for quite a while. There's just so much that ends up generating more questions than answers. The one source that I think needs to be looked into far more are the oral traditions of the Ute and the Navajo in that area. After all, they've been on that land for a very long time. There are a number of things that they know that have been passed down for generations. So I think if some of the answers are going to be found about this property and what's going on, it's going to come from the Native Americans, not necessarily the scientists. For me, other than the entertainment paranormal channels that throw Skinwalker into their titles for, of course, clicks and views, even though they're nowhere on the ranch, and they certainly aren't on the ranch after Bigelow sold it to a company called Adamantium, who have now, I believe, put fences up all around the property. And there are some concerns and issues with what's happened to some people after they've been there. That gets talked about a lot more in the second book, and I'll go over that when I review that book. As far as Hunt for the Skinwalker, if it's something that you're interested in, I do suggest it as a read. I mean, there is some interesting information, some different anomalies that they experienced and talk about. But if you're looking for any type of definitive proof or answers, This isn't the book that's going to give it to you. One thing I did appreciate is that at the back they include a list of references, and they're listed by chapter. So as you've come across different things, you can go back and check what was the book and what were the sources that they used. I very much enjoyed that because then it means that I can then go and look into more of this myself. There were a number of different names at the back that stood out. For example, Michael Cremo, he has a website and various information that delves into a lot of different things. In this particular case, he comes up in chapter 20, which is titled Monsters, and that relates to Bigfoot. If you've seen some of my previous videos, in particular Roswell and Sasquatch, there are more people now believing that these events all interrelate in terms of UFOs and ghost sightings, Bigfoot, and so many of these other things seem to be interconnected. Another name that stood out, he comes up in chapter 26, the military, has to do with Ingo Swann. His name will come up in The Field by Lynn McTaggart. He came up in George Newry's book, Worker in the Light, when they're talking about the remote viewing program. Harold E. Putoff also comes up in Worker in the Light, related with Ingo Swann and the remote viewing programs. Here he's mentioned in chapter 28, Other Dimensions, and that relates to SETI, the velocity of light limitation, and the Al-Kubri warp drive, an integrating overview. So again, a lot of these names interconnect. In the acknowledgements, there are a number of names that also stood out, like Dr. Edgar Mitchell. He comes up in the work by Lynn McTaggart and a number of other books that I've read. Dr. Jacques Vallée comes up in a number of the books that I've read, in particular UFOs, Myths, Conspiracy, and Realities by Dr. John B. Alexander, who also is mentioned in this book, and he was one of the scientists also involved with the investigations at the ranch. This is why I've mentioned putting together my card index of books that relate to each other, coming up with the list of names and listing the different books, because there's just so much interconnection between this material. And the more that you read different things, the more that you start to see these names all coming up within different subjects. So the field had to do with how our thoughts influence the world, influence events. Hunt for Skinwalker Ranch ties in with a number of different things, and yet the names from the field come up connected with Robert Bigelow, the investigation at the ranch. Their names will also come up with David Wilcox, who has very different theories related to conspiracies and other things. Their names, of course, come up in John B. Alexander's book, where he interconnects his experiences at the ranch, the different ways military work, and I'll talk more about him. I know someone that I was discussing these different things with seemed to have a bit of a concern about John B. Alexander and his connections with the remote viewing program. So there's just so many things to delve into. As always, I figure it's up to individuals if they're interested to keep looking, keep searching. This will definitely be something that I will be covering as a hoax or holy grail episode, so I'll take a much deeper look at that time into this particular work. Let me know if you've read Hunt for the Skinwalker. What are your thoughts about the book? Do you have some other titles related to this particular research? Until next time, happy searching and take good care.